Before we dive into today's episode, I want to extend a special invitation to all of our listeners. If you're considering adoption, navigating the home study process, or simply curious about your options, RG Adoption Consulting is here to guide you. Visit our website at www.rgadoptionconsulting.com/contact to schedule a complimentary chat. Our multi-agency approach is a strategic way to accelerate your adoption process without putting all your eggs in one basket. This strategy prevents you from feeling stuck with one agency, especially after a significant financial commitment. Why not consider a multi-agency approach with lower initial fees? We believe it makes a lot more sense. Plus, the support and education you receive through our services are aspects you might not expect you'll need until you're deep into the process. Reach out to us at rgadoptionconsulting.com/contact. We're here to support your adoption journey every step of the way. Your dream is to become a mom. My dream is to help you get there. I'm Rebecca Greenspan, a single mom through domestic adoption and an adoption consultant for over a decade. I'll be your guide, along with other adoption professionals and members of the adoption constellation, walking you step by step down this beautiful and complex path of adopting your baby. When I was going through the adoption process, I had no idea what I was doing, what I needed to know, or more importantly, who to trust. Well, after helping hundreds and hundreds of families grow through the beauty and complexity of adoption, I've learned more than a thing or two, and let me tell you, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. This isn't just another podcast sharing adoption stories, but it's for you if you're genuinely committed to diving in with an open heart, eager to learn everything there is to know about adopting a baby so that you can show up for yourself and your child in the best way possible. This podcast is for you if you're ready to put your newfound knowledge into action. Adoption isn't for the weak of heart, and it certainly isn't done when your baby gets placed in your arms. If that's what you think, I'm afraid you're living in La La Land. My promise to you is to keep it real if you promise to keep digging. We'll acknowledge the hard, and we'll also celebrate the joy that is adoption. You ready? Let's do this. All right, welcome to This Week in Adoption. I send my child off to camp for 1 month. His cousins go for 2 months. Maybe one day he will. And it used to be really sad coming back home and being without him, and it's just him and I at home. So it was really an eerie feeling for the first couple years. And now I'm like, oh my God, his room is clean. I can walk in his room and like breathe and enjoy it and feel him, but in a way that isn't making me anxious because I can't like step foot on his floor because it's filled with clothes. You know what I'm saying? So there is positive. It's all positive. I'm so grateful that he has this opportunity. I'm going to shout out to North Star Camp for Boys in northern Wisconsin. A lot of Chicagoans go there, and that's where my brother-in-law went, and then my nephews went, and my cousins went, and so my son has all these cousins around him, which is a beautiful bonding experience where they are making memories together. So I am so grateful. And then I spend a week in Chicago seeing my peeps and friends and clients and colleagues and family, and it fills me up. And then I come home and I start my massive purging, getting rid of all the shit. It hasn't really started. Well, it started a little bit, but I also try to make time to go out with friends, which I don't do enough. And it's important. It's important for us to reset and take care of ourselves and not be so hard on ourselves, which, by the way, was reiterated by my podcast guest on the Adoption Roadmap podcast by my guest, Maureen Dykinga. If you are a new parent, because this episode is specifically geared toward people who are just about to adopt or who are brand new parents. Otherwise, it might be a little bit too early, but when that happens for you, come back around to it. It is an important, imperative episode for you to listen to regarding how to best care for our children and set them up for success now for later in life. So if you're a new parent or a parent of a little one under 3, go listen to that right now. Like, just stop this and go listen to it. The Adoption Roadmap Podcast, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now back to this week's episode of This Week in Adoption. What's been going on? Well, first things first, a sip of my iced coffee. We had our Circle of Support call with an adoption competent therapist. We had a special guest, Cam Lee, as our adoption competent therapist. And there's a couple things that came up, and I want to just go over a couple of them because I think it's worth mentioning. One is that adoptees deserve the truth about their story, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. No matter how difficult. So how can we walk alongside them and help them notice how they feel in their bodies when we are talking about their stories? And how can we help them navigate whatever those feelings are and in the space that they are standing in as they learn more and more about themselves? A friend of mine just told me he is in his late 50s and he's an adoptee, and he's somebody that never really would talk about it so much and always said, yeah, I don't need to go find anybody. And suddenly, out of the blue, a biological sister called him. And suddenly he was interested in knowing his whole story, his medical background, and, you know, all the things, the messy parts, the not so messy parts, realizing that he had an amazing life, and one that is so different from the life that his sister led. But that just popped up in my mind because I could tell in him relaying the story to me that a lot was going on with his processing of this, both physically and emotionally. And the earlier, you know, obviously age appropriate. You know, we're not going to lay a whole story out that somebody can't emotionally handle at a given, you know, developmental stage in their life. So developmentally appropriate, our children deserve their entire story. So that came up again, something I've said before. And another thing that came up is that everything in adoption is both and. Everything is both and. It can be beautiful and it can be complicated. It can be beautiful and it can be gross. It can feel ethical and unethical. It can be better and it can be different. Everything is both and in adoption. Another person said she had just experienced a fall through. And a fall through is when an expectant mom changes her mind. Like, they've been matched for a while. They have paid a lot of money to support her and her expenses and to the agency and wherever else. And then she changes her mind. So emotionally, they're not becoming the parents they thought they were about to become to this child. And financially, they're out a lot of money. And she said, I appreciate all the cards and the words of encouragement that I continue to get from my family and friends, but now I am just ready to move forward. And I need them to back off a little. It's both and in adoption. You need that. You need that support. You need those hugs. You need those words of encouragement. And then a boundary needs to be set, and you need to ask them to stop so that you can move forward. Everything in adoption is both and. 2 books were brought up as suggested readings. Cam brought these to our attention. Journey of the Adopted Self. I have not read either of these. Journey of the Adopted Self and Beneath the Mask. So I just wanted to share those with you as well, in case you want to go check those out. All right, I want to go through some of our Q2 stats. If you go back in the Adoption Roadmap podcast, you'll see our Q1 stats. So if you want to follow what's happening in the adoption world, at least in our world, and we work with about 100 families at a time, and I can talk about why that's a good thing and not necessarily a negative thing. It's both and, right? At another time. But if you want to go hear what the Q1 stats were and then listen to this one, go do so. So let me tell you, and I don't have Q1, so I'm not going to compare them, but I just want to share. Adoptions are still down all over the place. More fall throughs are happening. Ugh. Both and. Sometimes you have to suffer a lot of heartache to get to your dream. Both and. Okay, we had 19 placements in Q2. Still an amazing number. And like if you call different agencies, some agencies do a ton of placements. Some agencies do barely any placements. 19 is a pretty good number for one quarter. Most agencies, I'd say, have about 15 to 20, unless they're the really big agencies, in this half a year so far, up until the end of June. So we had 20. I'm going to guess we've had about 40 for the year so far, but 19. We celebrate our 400th adoption. That's exciting. And you know what's really cool? It was, first of all, it was with one of our single mamas. And it was with the same agency that we had our 300th adoption. I haven't told them yet. I have to tell them. Let's see here. What else can I share with you? Hold on. I'm breaking it down. I'm going through our slides, see what's important to tell you about. I can tell you that last year, so we're down from last year. Last year, why does this say Q1? I think it's supposed to be. Last year, Q2 was 23 placements. This year is 19 placements. So not that far off, but far off. Okay. Of the placements that we had in Q2, 4 were single women, 3 were same-sex male couples, so gay couples, and 12 were heterosexual man and woman couples. 4 single women, though. That's pretty good. Although Q2 2023, we had 3 single women. And I think like 1 gay couple. So there's that. And still, we don't have one agency that we work with that we do the most placements with. We work with a ton of different agencies, and our placements are coming from all over the place. So we just never know. So we would never put all of our eggs in one basket, just like we tell you not to. Q2 2024, boys versus girls. I always love this. Okay, so last year, 12 boys, 11 girls in Q2. That's what our families adopted. This year, Q2 2024, 12 boys, 7 girls. So it was the quarter of boys. I feel like we always see more boys than girls. Race. Let's talk about race in Q2 of 2024. 31% were white. Caucasian, 31%. So a third. 32% were Caucasian mix. So white, black, white, Hispanic, white, Native American, white, anything. That was 32%. 21% were full African American, 16% Hispanic. 31% Caucasian, 32% Caucasian mix, 21% African American, 16% Hispanic. We always have a little contest between our consultants. So last quarter we had 3 consultants, and our consultant Rachel had the most clients take placement. Shout out to her. All right. One thing that is skewing, especially in Q2, which is new for us. We've never seen this in many, many years. And I think it's still a fallout from COVID, but I'm keeping it real. So most of the placements in Q2 were people that have been waiting for over a year. So that's going to skew the stats a little bit. Last year, 89% of our families adopted in under a year. And I still hope to see that the majority of our families are, but in Q2, that was not the case. One person adopted in from the start date, from starting with us, 1 to 3 months. 3 were 4 to 6 months. 3 were 7 to 9 months. So that's 6, 7, 8. 1 was 10 to 12 months, and 11 was over 12 months. So we still had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We had 8 people adopt in under a year and 11 people over a year. Yeah. Okay. We had 6 people have fall throughs who lost money. Some matched and it fell through, but no money was ever lost. But 6, so that's about 24%, had a financial loss with a fall through. And this is interesting too. So fall throughs, so the time between the match and the due date. So we like to look at what was the length of the match that they had a fall through. So we want to see, is it the longer matches that tend to fall through more or the shorter matches that tend to fall through more? And we cannot find a statistic on that. So the majority of the fall throughs were matches of less than 2 months. Of less than 2 months. We had a couple 5 to 6 months, but we had the majority less than 2 months. Of our clients who took placement, 9% Hispanic, 18% biracial, 9% Black, and 64% white. We always have the most white couples, but we also have a great amount of couples who are non-white. 45% single, 54% married, 0.5, 45.5, 54.5. And something that we are just starting to look at. So, this is something that we're working on more and more, but I think it's interesting to note. So level of openness of the placements that, of the ones that took placement. 3 fully open, direct contact with no visits. 1 closed. Fully open with visits, 1. And that's just what's known from, what mom was asking for at the time of match. These can change. But that's interesting. And 6 are unknown. So I'm not sure. Again, we're working on that, and I'm not sure where that's coming from, but it's all very interesting. Now, amount spent, This is just for the agency situation. I just heard from an inquiry call that I had. One person said to me that they just got off the phone with a very large agency in this country who said that the average adoptions were between 70 and 80,000. What the actual F? That's crazy. We're still seeing situations anywhere from about 39 to 76. And those ones with a 7 in front of it make me want to puke. But of the people who adopted, of the 19, 5 of those situations were between 50 to 55,000, 2 56 to 60, 3 61 to 70, and 2 over 70. So, and then there were 7 that we didn't get tracked for whatever reason. But the ones that we tracked were between 50 and over 70. So I still stand behind 50 to 60 as the average. We also started trying to find out, is the birth mom getting legal representation during the signing of the papers? And, is an attorney going over with her all of her rights, making sure she fully understands everything? And some agencies do that very well, and not every state legally requires a birth mom to have her own legal representation. I think they should. It's never a bad thing. And I encourage our families to ask and to offer to pay for it if it's not. Some agencies are more open to it. I don't know why they wouldn't be. Other agencies will say it's not required. That's not how we do it. And that's the way it is. But of the ones we asked, 11 were unknown. We didn't get the stats. And again, these are new things that we're trying to track, and we'll get better and better at it. 6 of them said no, that she did not have legal representation. 2 said yes. 7 of them said there were no exposures. 8 unknown. 3 methamphetamines, 1 fentanyl, and 1 marijuana. Okay. So again, getting better at that, but interesting, only 1 fentanyl, and that's on the rise, as we know. We are getting referrals from so many different places, which is something that we track as well. But still, most is people are finding us on Google and social media, which is amazing. We look at some of our social media stats, and then we look at what we want to start doing differently and what's working, what isn't working. So that's kind of a wrap up. I know that was a little bit long. Thanks for bearing with me. That's kind of the overall what we saw in Q2 of 2024. The last thing I want to bring up, 2 more things. One is somebody was asking about private adoptions. Should they use an agency or an attorney? And what that means is they have matched on their own. They have found an expectant mother on their own through whatever means. And now they're matched. And to move forward with the adoption, should they go just to an attorney or should they go to an agency? One of the concerns was that they want the mom to have as much support as she can. And my answer is it doesn't matter. Either way, when there's an identified adoption, it is way cheaper. The fees, the financials for you are much, much less. So expect that. So if you're hearing something like 50 or whatever, nope, it may be 13, 15, something around there. So if you go to an attorney, just ask, do you have a social worker that you usually work with or a caseworker that can work with the expectant mama? Usually an agency has that built in. But either way, they will, whichever entity you work with. And so I don't know that you necessarily need an agency, but just ask the questions. Ask how they do that. Ask how much. Ask how the expectant mom will be supported. And they should manage all the money. My ear itches. Okay, so there's that. So there's not a right or wrong. And when to add agencies. What do I mean? I just told you that we had a lot of people who were waiting for over a year. We always have our families, we recommend that our families sign up with at least 3 agencies to start. That's kind of our magic number. And it's a great place to start. If 4 months go by, 6 months go by, 8 months go by, at whichever level that you're starting to get really antsy, you need to take stock. And this is where our trackers come in place. We have trackers for people. You should be tracking which agencies and attorneys you've applied to, that you're active with, how many situations you are seeing, how many you've passed up and said no to, and how many you've presented to. That is going to tell us, are you getting the amount of activity that you need in order to possibly match sooner rather than later? And if not, we should start looking at adding more places to be signed up with. More is more in adoption when you're trying to match with the right match. Get into as many places as you possibly can so that your profile is put in front of as many expectant moms that would be a good match for you as possible. That's how you're going to get matched. And when I say that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're now spending another $15,000. It could be that you are spending $0. It could mean that you're spending $250, $1,000. Only you know where you're at, what's feasible for you, but there are options. So I just wanted to let you know that came up as well this week. It's, just a lot of questions of, should we be adding more agencies? And that's when we say, well, let's look at what's been happening. Have you been tracking? And sometimes we'll say, no, you're getting a lot of great situations. Now let's look at how many you've actually presented to. Okay, you've said no a lot. Why? Let's look at why you've been saying no. Okay, you've said yes a lot. You've presented a ton. Have you gotten any feedback from the agencies or attorneys? Have you asked? Usually you won't get anything. Every once in a while you'll get some feedback. But that tells me, let's go back and look at your profile. Maybe let's change things up in your profile, and maybe it's not adding agencies. So data is information. There's a lot of things that you can look at. What is it that you may need to tweak if you're getting antsy and waiting for a long time? Okay. If you are considering adoption, I would love to hop on a Google Meet with you. And right now it would be me. Let's hop on a Google Meet, have a conversation so that I can answer your questions. Go check out our website, rgadoptionconsulting.com. A lot of information on that website. Even if you don't call me, you're going to learn a lot. And that is the key. A well-educated person has a much easier time in their adoption journey than one who's coming in knowing nothing. And there's a lot you don't know. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Have a beautiful weekend. And, have you been listening to episodes of the Adoption Roadmap podcast? There is so much education there. Go dive in. And if you listen on Apple, please leave us a review or rate us a subscribe. It really helps us get this information and education out to more and more people who really, truly need it. So that would mean a lot to me. Thank you guys so much. Until next week in adoption, toodaloo. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. If you did, I have a few favors to ask of you. First, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd love to hear your takeaways. Please write a review and let me know what you liked. And if you have a question or a suggestion on what you'd like to hear, I'd love to hear that too. Please shoot me an email at support@rgadoptionconsulting.com and let me know what you'd like to hear about. And if you have a question, I may just answer it online. Thanks again for listening. Tune in every Wednesday and Friday morning for a brand new episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.